I want to welcome everyone who has showed up today. I am Lucy Lacoste, your host for this roundtable. And before we get started, I just want to ask everyone if you could please, all the participants, the people who are in on the roundtable, if you could please mute your mics. Thank you so much. So I want to welcome all of you who are going on this journey to Denmark with us today for a warm talk with some of the artists from our current exhibition, Danish Women in Contemporary Ceramics, December 12th, which is today, through January 5th. The gallery is very pleased to close the 2020 season with this all-female exhibition, highlighting the leading role women have played in the development of ceramics there. I especially want to thank you artists who have so enthusiastically agreed to join us. Metamaya Gregerson. Meta, I want to wave to everybody. Meta, thank you. And Bente Skutko. Bente, very good to have you. And Charlotta Thorpe. Thank you, ladies, very much for participating at your 5 p.m., which is quite a civilized hour. Maybe my favorite hour, though 11 a.m. isn't too bad either. So I also want to thank my energetic co-host and the moderator for this event, the inimitable Garth Johnson.
Thank you, Lucy. Great to be here.
My dear friend, the Paul Phillips and Sharon Sullivan, curator of ceramics at the Everson Museum of Art in Syracuse. And as Garth said, I mean, Syracuse has a long history with ceramics, the museum does, and with Danish ceramics. Some of that may come out later. In addition, I give my deep gratitude to my team of Hannah Barber and Zoe Rose, who worked ceaselessly in every way to put this show together, and especially this Zoom roundtable. Hannah, I'd like to thank you especially for being with me every step of the way on this one, and Zoe from doing all you've done from the sidelines. It is a pleasure to see you all here at this very busy time of the year to talk about the relevant topic of women in Danish ceramics. Denmark, a country with an abundance of clay, has a long tradition of ceramics going back to the Vikings. Women have been part of the studio pottery movement there as early as the late 19th century, and were probably involved at Royal Copenhagen as decorators in the 18th century. Why have women taken such a leading role in Danish ceramics, in contrast to other societies? This is the really interesting question we want to explore. Perhaps, I mean, it starts with clay being an accessible medium for women. I think perhaps too, the manufacturers in Denmark play quite a contribution by hiring women and giving them studio space. Then it's the fact that Denmark is such an egalitarian society. And I think somewhere along the way, there were very great teachers who instilled in all of you freedom and creativity. It is noteworthy that the two leading figures in Danish ceramics in the 20th century were the women Gertrude Vassgård and Gutta Eriksson. Vassgård, or maybe it's Vassgård, you have to forgive my pronunciation of every language other than English, even some English. Anyway, Vassgård, from the important Horth ceramic family, did much to make the cylinder iconic in Danish ceramics, while Gutta Eriksson, the Mingay potter in Denmark and teacher, is known for inspiring hundreds of women to be potters, called Gutta's Girls. I would be remiss if I didn't mention a little bit about my gallery's history with Danish ceramics and touch on a few seminal shows in America on Danish ceramics that brought awareness to all. In 2007, I began a friendship with a man named William Hall, who was at one time, he was from Syracuse, and at one time, among other things, he was the director of what was in the Syracuse Museum of Art, now the Everson, which I think is kind of a fitting tie-in. Bill is really responsible to introducing so much of America to Danish ceramics. He traveled to Denmark almost every year from the 50s. He became friends with everyone from Gudde Eriksson, Bodelmans, Alev Sisby, to the three, Biata Anderson, Jana Rumer, and Gunhild Auberg, the three who had their studio at Lilla Strandstrata. But it was his wonderful show, Danish Ceramic Design, and this is the catalog. I know some of you know it, that first introduced America to Danish ceramics. This show, and in that show were several people in this exhibition. That show was followed in 2002 by a very big traveling exhibition from the kilns of Denmark, which opened at what was the American Craft Museum, now the Museum of Arts and Design in New York City. And I have to say, curated by Hope Barkin and Wendy Tarlow, in case they are listening. The thing about this show is it showed the power of Danish ceramics, whether vessel or sculpture. I mean, I remember seeing it, and even the vessels were sculpture. And it also included a number of artists from Danish ceramic design. So this is the catalog for this show. And probably, this is a picture, Barbara Auberg is on the cover, and she's in this exhibition. Probably more of you know about this even than Bill's show. So based on all that, getting to know Bill, having the opportunity to sell his collection, which was mostly Danish ceramics, we did our own show in 2008 called A View from Denmark, which got us connected with a lot of Danish ceramic artists. So our current exhibition, Danish Women in Contemporary Ceramics, which this discussion highlights, is really exciting and fabulous. I am thrilled with it. It includes artists of 3 generations. The work is varied too, from straight lines to organic, inspirations from architecture to nature. There's a lot of color, for which I'm grateful for at this time of the year. And always the touch of the hand and the intent of the mind, from vessel to sculpture, always powerful. Now I would like to introduce all the artists in our current exhibition by age groups, by generations, because there are something like 3 generations loosely here. And to do that, we're going to show an image of each, and I'm just going to say a few words. Right, Hannah? Okay, so you want to put the first image up, which this is Biata Anderson, and she and Gunhild Auberg, who follows, are considered 2 of the grand dames of Danish ceramic art. Biata was born in 1942 and educated in the early 60s at the Danish School of Arts and Crafts in Copenhagen, and belongs to the elite within Danish ceramics. And as I've said before, after she graduates, she and Jana Rumer and Gunhild, well, I'll talk about Gunhild next, opened their renowned ceramic studio on Lilla Strandstrata near the old harbor in Copenhagen that exists today. Biata was in the museum exhibitions, Danish Ceramic Design, that's Bill's show from '82, From the Kilns of Denmark 2002, and A View from Denmark at Lacoste Gallery. Here's a little quote from her. "It's a matter close to my heart to ensure that my patterns merge with the form of the jar, transforming, becoming a unified whole of its own, a life imbued with a sense of infinity," and that they do. Okay, now we'll go to Gunhild Auberg. Born in 1939, Gunhild is a renowned Danish contemporary artist and ceramist based in Copenhagen, with her studio on Lilla Strandstrata near the harbor. The thing about Gunhild is she's really known for sculpture. Even her vessels are sculptural. She spends weeks hand building a piece, reshaping it many times. If she's not satisfied, as she said, she puts it to sleep and destroys it. She then focuses on the surface using different tools, followed by layers of slip and glaze. Auberg was in the music exhibition Danish ceramic design Bill's show from the kilns of Denmark and our A View from Denmark. Next, we go to Anna Flaka. Anna, born in 1952, was a student of Guta Eriksson at the Jutland Academy of Fine Arts, Aarhus. She is represented by Lucy Lacoste Gallery. And she says, I work with a clay that is strong and flexible, that allows me to work freely, building three-dimensional forms, as well as laying out quite big slabs with no drying or firing problems. My tools are brushes, sticks for incising, simple sketches, knives for deeper traces, fingers, all kinds of things, each suiting the purpose I work with. My colors derive from terra sigillata. I very much like the dryness of the engobe and the clay, desert-like, close to the chalk look of whitewashed walls. It is a language I can use freely. It allows me to concentrate on what I wish to say. And so we've known Anna a long time. She's married to the Danish artist Hans von Suhr, we also represent. We got to know her through Bill. She's been to my gallery many times and has been in other shows here. So thank you, Anna. Now we come, so Anna's sort of the bridge, and then we come to the next generation, Bente Skutko. Bente, thank you again and again for joining us. So glad to have you here. Born in Frederiksberg, Denmark in 1961, takes inspiration from an amalgamation of sources that continue to push her to experiment with clay. She interacts with the material in a manner that defies the boundaries of traditional form, often producing works that express her unique interpretation of nature. Stuttgart has a long history of internationally showing her talent throughout Europe, Asia, and the United States, and was a major force in the 2002 exhibition from the Kilns of Denmark. Thank you, Bente. Can't wait to hear more about your work. So we now go to Barbara Auberg, who was born in Sweden in 1958, but is considered a Danish artist. Barbara is probably the artist in this group who's shown with us the most. We've given her 2 solos, one recently. She was in a 2-person show with Hans. She was in our show in 2008, and she was on the cover and in the show from the Kilns of Denmark. So Barbara is known for breathtaking ceramic sculptures inspired by nature and science. Many are open work forms which are amplified by the play of light. Through her use of paper clay and her own artistic exploration, she has changed the language of contemporary ceramics. So Auberg was in the Kilns of Denmark 2002 and our show A View from Denmark, and has been represented by Lucy Lacoste Gallery since 2008. Okay, and now it's time for Metamaya Gregerson. Born in 1973. Hello, Meta. So glad that you could be here. I just was hesitating over, pronunciation of your name and everything. Born in 1973, her ceramic expression is based on movement, both from her observations of nature and her own personal journey through life. Her path has led her through many countries, living and studying, and ultimately gaining a better understanding for her lived experiences, which she embodies in her art forms. Beginning her formal training as a ceramist in London, Metamaya has moved throughout Europe and shown on the international stage for over a decade. She currently has a studio in Silkeborg, Denmark. Thank you, Metamaya. Can't wait to hear you talk about your work. Now I'd like to formally introduce again my dear friend, the irrepressible expert on contemporary ceramics and Danish ceramics. Charlotta? Oh, did I not do Ah, God. Okay. Skip. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. We can go back. Charlotta. Last but not least, someone whose work I adore, born in 1973. Charlotta, so glad that you can be here. Please wave to everybody. There you go. We'll put extra emphasis on you. Has had a prolific career in ceramics, graduating in 2000 from the Glass and Ceramics School of Bornholm. She has since traveled and shown internationally, from New Zealand to Japan and throughout Europe. Within the United States, this is her second show at Lucy Lacoste Gallery, as she was first in a show here curated by Anne Linneman in 2016 called Danish Contemporary. So we're so glad to invite you back and have you here. Charlotta resides in Savaneka, Denmark, on the island of Bornholm, where she has a studio. Thank you, Charlotta.
Thanks.
So glad you're here. Okay, now I'd like to introduce my dear friend, the irrepressible expert on contemporary ceramics and contemporary Danish ceramics, Garth Johnson, the Paul Phillips and Sharon Sullivan Curator of Ceramics at the Everson Museum of Art. So now, Garth, I'm going to say, take it away. This is your part.
Okay. Well, so
off to you. Yeah.
So Lucy calls me an expert in Danish ceramics, which is certainly overstating things, but I have to say that I'm such an enthusiast, at least, for Danish ceramics, Danish design, Danish furniture, mid-century Danish is the passion of mine. And, you know, Denmark is something that's always been close to my heart. You know, it's interesting. I was reflecting a little bit. The first Danish woman that I ever met, my family, when I was growing up, hosted exchange students. And one of the first exchange students that we hosted was a young woman from Denmark. And she was one of the most driven, badass people that I've ever met. And she had a passion for becoming a helicopter pilot, which she has done, and has had this really interesting career. And that was my introduction, but those observations have been borne out, I think, through getting to travel to Denmark and meet artists throughout Denmark. There's really something special about the way that women have driven the conversation in Denmark. So I'm going to show an image, first of all, and I guess I'll back up slightly just to give a brief plug to the Everson Museum of Art, where I'm fortunate enough to be the curator. I'd like to say that the Everson really contains the bedrock of the American studio ceramics movement. Starting in 1932, the Everson, which was then the Syracuse Museum of Fine Arts, hosted the Ceramic National exhibitions. And periodically, those actually became the Ceramic International exhibitions. So on the left, you see Adelaide Alsop Robineau's Scarab Vase, arguably, maybe inarguably, the most famous pot in the history of American ceramics. And on the right, you see the 20th Ceramic National from 1952, which included a host of Danish artists, including Biata Anderson and other Danish women in the exhibition. So the Everson is really built on the contribution of women. Anna Olmsted, our director, was the director who instituted the Ceramic Nationals, and she revered the work of Adelaide Robineau, and women have always been part of the conversation at the Everson in Syracuse. But I want to talk, and I'm not going to go on too long, but I just wanted to highlight a few figures that really blow me away in terms of setting up infrastructure and setting a high bar within Denmark, whether it's for applied art or design or art. And this really starts for me with two artists who have become an ongoing research project for me and a passion, and are two artists that I want to have represented in the Everson, but are not yet. And I see them as contemporaries of Adelaide Alsop Robineau. So this is Effie Hagerman Lindencron and Fanny Gard. And they started working in the late 1800s and continued working at Bingen Grundal in Denmark up until their deaths, essentially. I have indications, but maybe not confirmations, that they, in addition to sharing a studio, like may have been life partners as well. If anyone has sort of more sort of concrete information, I would love to know it, just for gaining a fuller picture of what they did. But their work is so incredible in terms of the way that they were approaching shaping porcelain. And they were working within a bit of an Art Nouveau language, incorporating nature into their objects. But they were doing deep carving and deep incising into their work in a way that I think that they're possibly the only real rivals to Adelaide Robineau for doing such intensive carving into their work. So this covered jar is actually incised all of the way through. So when I zoom in, you can see all of those incisions. And then on the right, and I hope that this isn't covered over. If you go full screen, you'll make sure that these are not covered over. Again, you can see the charming open work incisions, and this open work would have really been done at a bone dry stage, I believe, carefully carving through. And anyone who's carved porcelain, which is a finicky material in itself, knows how difficult that this can be. All right, I'm going to show a few more images. This one, and these are also images of pieces that are in a clay museum in Denmark. So if you are visiting Denmark, don't forget to go to Middelfart to go to Clay Museum. But this Effie Hagerman Lindencron piece is a particular beloved piece for me, with all of these incredible asymmetrical overlapping bits of seaweed that are making up the piece. Also, the very soft decoration in terms of the color, I think, is something that is incredible to me. So I'm going to jump forward to the 1950s, and I can't overstate the contributions of Biata Anderson. One of the things that's always obsessed me about Danish ceramics is the attention to surface and detail, bringing in lava-like glazes to accentuate textures and to attenuate all of the forms. So look at this covered tureen done by Biata Anderson. Look at this incredible bowl with its just sort of slight asymmetry and the life that it has. And Lucy, you're still on here. You had advocated very strongly, and I agree, for including the work of Gertrude Vassgård in all of this. And Lucy, so we should never sort of use men to sort of be any sort of yardstick, I think, for measuring artists. But you made an interesting comparison in terms of American male ceramists who set the tone in certain ways. Do you want to share what that was?
Gee, gosh. Well, in the way that Peter Voulkos was led to one whole strain of ceramics in the U.S., and the way Warren McKenzie led to the other. I'm not saying that one of these is like Peter Voulkos, although
No.
I would say Biata Anderson was considered the Warren McKenzie of Denmark. But so it seems to me that Gertrude Vassgård was, she was a progenitor of one lineage of ceramics, which I hope maybe you and the artists will get into a little more about her inspiration and influence on contemporary Danish ceramics, because it's clearly very high. And in the Kilns of Denmark book, which is a wonderful resource, which I can catalog I can recommend to anybody. The history there is so strong. It tells you everything you need to know. But so they start with Gertrude Basgard and Gudde Eriksson. And then after that, they do everybody else in alphabetical order.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. I want to take your comments in spirit.
It was the spirit of the thing.
Yes, no, absolutely. And they are the taproot, I think, of the modern studio.
That's a good way of saying.
And then the final person that I'll talk about pretty briefly, and Lucy, this is someone who you have, long-standing connections to. And when I traveled to Denmark a year and a half ago, Nina Hole came up again and again and again. And I knew Nina a little bit. We had conspired to work on an exhibition that never quite came to fruition, but her work is one thing. And, I'll say that Lucy, you've been sort of the exclusive American representative for Nina's work. But Nina, I think, exemplifies something else that is important when thinking about women in Denmark, and that is she was a founder of things. She was an organizer of things. So from the ceramic collective that she organized at a fairly young age to some of the other things that she organized. Let's see. So in particular, being one of the founders of Guliogo, and again, all of my Danish friends, you can make fun of me as much as you want for my terrible Danish pronunciation, but the International Ceramic Research Center, which has become really a global hub where I know so many people who have had huge advancements in their careers and their study and their connections to other people that have come through Denmark. And Nina, as one of the founders, is so important. And I've already talked about the Clay Museum in Middelfart, and she was one of the prime movers who brought that together. Here's an image of that. And Bente has a great connection with the Ceramic Museum in Denmark, in that she was one of the 3 curators of an exhibition called Ceramic Momentum, which is what brought me to Denmark for this marvelous trip that I had. I'm going to end with just a quick video. We are fortunate enough in the United States to have Nina Hole's final artwork, which was a monumental fire sculpture called Repose, which is at Purdue University in Indiana. And so I'm going to show it a little video clip just for the scale. These are monumental ceramic pieces that she built. And the pieces are simultaneously kilns. And this is a technology that Nina Hole really kind of helped develop herself. And we're going to look at and they're really meant to be activated and thought about as they're fired.
When everything is quiet and we are taking the fiber up, and you see the first layer comes up, and you see that tip of this glowing sculpture is dark. And it's so beautiful.
Have it standing in the night sky, sort of still glowing yellow, orange hot.
That's
kind of complete the performance.
That to me is.
Okay, so I have little chills, running through my spine, and this is something that I want to emphasize about Danish work, and you can see this throughout your exhibition, Lucy, that Danish artists are collaborators with their kilns in large part, and this is something that goes through the entire exhibition. So I'm going to shut up, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to focus on the incredible artists. So Lucy, would you like to introduce our first participant?
I thought maybe you would do it.
Okay, so our Bente, is Bente going to be stepping in first?
That would be fine.
Okay, great.
Oh, right, because we're going to do their images. So
yeah, so you're going to have to.
Actually, well, wait a minute. We're going to do that. Yeah, let Bente step in first.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll go Bente, Charlotta, Metamaya. How's that? Yeah.
So we're going to ask each of the participants to talk about the work for about 5 minutes, and Lucy and I may interject lightly, but then we're going to transition to a more open conversation.
Dialogue. Yes.
Okay.
What we're going to do now is talk about two pieces of their work in the exhibition. Okay. Are you, does that work for you?
Yeah. Am I on?
Are on, Bente.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for inviting me to this exhibition and to the roundtable discussion. My name is Bente Skutko. What I'm showing is a group of 5 glazed objects. I call them metamorphoses. Each one is carrying a layer of fat glaze to the maximum of what is possible and demonstrates the material's transformation during firing to the high temperatures. It starts with a thin construction of stoneware like a skeleton. And then I dip the top in fat glaze. They are dipped in several layers of different colors. It's a test on how fat the glaze can be before it falls off or runs down or something else is happening. People often tell me that my glazes looks yummy and like cake glaze. I was thinking lollipop or transformation ball candy. I use not only the glaze as a surface, but also as a self-forming material. Based on many years of experience, experimentations, and thousands of glaze samples, I work quite freely, but constantly challenging myself and my material to new limits of what is possible. In that way, everything I do is an experiment.
So Bente, those pieces that are falling off, are they clay covered with glaze or are they glaze?
They are glaze. They are glaze. All the fat, all the top of it is glaze, and what is falling off is white glaze covered with another color, covered with another color. Yeah. So it's glaze on the top.
Becomes
and all the
element.
Yeah, the structure, the stoneware structure underneath is just very thin, like the lakes you see. I say that I cooperate with the kiln. The loss of control at the high temperatures, where everything becomes soft again in the kiln, gives the works a natural movement and an independent life, I think. I want the works to seem as if they're made with a light hand, even though it's sometimes an insanely difficult engineering work lies ahead. I work systematically and always on the premises of the ceramic material, but often balance on the border of what is possible. And the studies develop into free interpretations and expressive amorphous nature abstractions with lots of glaze. But this time I've put the experiments into a test series focused on the variety of expressions that may come from a specific study with these very thick glazes. I was thinking if you could put me out in the room, I will show you what is behind me here. Yeah, you can see behind me here. I have some larger. I have tried to enlarge. That's what I'm working with just now. To enlarge the small metamorphoses. It's quite difficult to keep the same freshness when you upscale them. It's because it becomes more like a construction work. But again, I expect that the kiln will help me. I'm only halfway there before I release them in the kiln. And afterwards, I select the best. Of course, this is in this way I work with. I have many mistakes on the way. If they're not in balance, for instance, they will tip over when the top gets heavy from the glaze. I will have to take these big ones and dip them in very large buckets of glaze. Yeah.
And Joyce asks a question about what cone you're firing these to. So they're stoneware. Are you working in mid-range cone 6, or are these cone 10 firings?
Cone. I go to 1280 degrees, which I think is called cone 9 or something.
Okay. So we're porcelain temperatures, and you're getting maximum transformation and movement in the work.
Yes, yes.
I also wanted to put in a little bit of a plug right now, if it's not too impolitic, and that is that you are juggling 2 simultaneous exhibitions in the United States right now. Bente also has work up at the Jason Jacques Gallery in New York City, and that exhibition has just been extended if you have the opportunity to see both of these exhibitions.
And I would just add, Garth, that in that work, and to Bente, that work is very different, and that to me is interesting.
Yes. Yeah, the work, can you speak a little bit briefly? You're something of an omnivore when it comes to ceramics. You have a history of working with industry. Was it Royal Copenhagen that you worked with?
It was actually, right after I graduated. I was employed for 4 years at the porcelain factory Binger Grøndal, which was later merged with Royal Copenhagen. It was a kind of artist in resident employment they had at that time for ceramic artists and also for newly graduated young talents. And I had my own studio and free hand to experiment with the factory's material, glazes, firing, etc. So it was almost an extra education of 4 years. It was a very fantastic opportunity, of course. And at that time, there was a large exhibition at the factory with the fabulous old nature-inspired Art Nouveau porcelain pieces, which is with this wonderful depth in the glaze. This is what the porcelain factories can do. They have many years of researching into glaze, and they were painted by Effie Hegemann Lindenkrone and Fanny Susanne Garde and other porcelain painters, which Gas also spotted. And that exhibition was actually my first major ceramic exhibition I saw in Copenhagen. And it was absolutely amazing and made a deep impression on me, and is definitely part of my luggage also today. And at my current exhibition at Jason Jacques, you can find a lot of seaweed-inspired works and other organic growths. That's also was some of the favorite topics of Effie Hegemann Lindenkrone. And some of the glazes, the glazes that I use is also back from where I started with the shiny turquoise and blue-green watery depths. Yeah.
So this is a perfect transition. You were talking about generations. You're talking about organic, sort of nature-inspired work, and I think that's a perfect time to bring up Metamaya's work, particularly this first image that you have teed up. If you'd like to share that, Lucy. All right, so I'd like to introduce Metamaya Gregerson, and I will let you take it away and drive, talking about these images of your work. And you may be muted.
Yeah, you are muted. There you go.
Okay, thank you. And well, happy to be here and happy to talk a little bit about my work, because this image here is called Blue Wave, and wave structures has been prominent in my work throughout the last 10 years, and is very much influenced by the movement of waves. I've always been really fascinated by the continuously change of the wave structure and the wave movement, and especially how it can also be used as a symbol for moving and from trying to relate to life, how we kind of go through life. So for me, in the way I create work, it's very important that it's been reflected in my thoughts and my own way of viewing work kind of represent whatever I see, and the wave movement has been like it's about fleeting moments, trying to hold on to these fleeting moments that our life consists of. And because I've been traveling for many years, for the last 20 years, I've been going through many different countries and been living, studying, working. I've had a need to kind of just hold on to a moment. So these wave pieces are represented as a standstill of these moments, and also the way I've been making them are equally important. The making process of using bamboo blinds to actually create the wave structure, because when I make the structure of the bamboo and apply the clay onto the bamboo burns away and leave a mark of what was once there, but the structure from the mark is still there. So a bit like when you have an experience, you have still that experience in you. It's kind of been burned into your memory or your body, but you can't take it with you all the time. So yeah, that's where these waveforms came by. Yeah. And this second image, Geometry of Echoes, it's called. It's kind of it's kept in the same line with the waves, but instead of going from one place to another constantly, I'm trying to. What would a sentiment be if you kind of were able to hold it in one place, and through repetition of structure and form and plaster cast and molds, so to try, instead of making waves moving from one place to another constantly all the time, in this piece I have been aiming to kind of just form it onto itself through these repetitional layers, but with the bamboo blinds, because I love those bamboo blind structures, also the wooden structures, because it's linear, and the way our thoughts also kind of moves in linear ways. There has to be some sort of a connection between thought, idea, hand, shape, and movement. Yeah.
So, Metamaya, where did you go to school in London?
Well, I went to Camberwell College of Art, the same college where Lucy Ree was educated. So she has also talking about ceramic female heroes. She's definitely one of them. But before that, I was educated as a potter in Denmark. And just briefly, if I can just say, I mean, when I was in Denmark, and everybody I was taught by throughout the whole pottery scene has been kind of really strong male figures. And then coming to England, it was all like female ceramicists who caved the wave for us today, I think.
I'd like to just add one more question in there, and you know, I've observed that Danish ceramic artists are some of the most well-traveled artists in the field, and the number of residencies and the number of connections that they make. I mean, Priscilla Moritzen is sort of an ambassador who seems to be at every residency that I check in on. Can you reflect a little bit about what it is there something in the Danish character education that you know, leads you to do so much travel and to seek so much influence from sort of the global ceramic scene?
Well, I think basically because Denmark is such a small country, and everybody knows each other. At the moment, we're only 5 million people. And if you want to expand, if you want to explore cultural differences, you want to see the world, I mean, it's been important to actually leave the country to be able to actually gain more knowledge and to gain like a broader and wider experience of what's going on in the world. And maybe that's kind of a leftover from the Viking days. To actually want to explore the world a little bit. And I think, I mean, even though I get really inspired by other ceramic artists in Denmark, like both Charlotte and Bente are amazing artists, I think we all want to see what else is out there, because our country is so small, and maybe that's why we're being represented more in the world.
So I think this is a perfect transition for being able to bring Charlotta on, and you know, Charlotta is bringing in a lot of influences from architecture and design, and we're going to let her speak for herself. So welcome, Charlotta. And we'll have to make sure that you're unmuted as well.
Charlotte, you need to unmute. Click on the red microphone. Anna?
Okay.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay, thanks Lucy for inviting me for this exhibition. And I will start to talk about what my thoughts are behind the pieces that I'm showing in this show. And it's for a long time I've been fascinated for patterns and spatial dimensions and contrast and connections. And that's just somehow that I capture during daily life. I mean, it could be from architecture or geometry or from the nature, but also from textiles and design like furnitures. And all these impressions I'm saving in my head, and they pops up. I mean, they can pop up during day, but also when I'm in the studio, then the ideas arrives. And so what I want to do is to express these impression in the clay. So for this exhibition, it's sculpture works, and then I think they all much is inspired of or look like small architectural scales buildings, and the way that I'm making them is like the piece that you see now is made of 3 different pieces. How should I explain? Like when you see the legs, that's the first part that I start making. So I'm actually making various modules, forms, and I use them like building blocks. And I make all these building blocks in different clay types. It could be white and dark one, and also porcelain. And and I do different kind of making them. Some is coil, is doing by coil, hand-built coiling, and some is made by slabs, and all of those techniques I'm also always looking for somehow to keep the finger marks or the tool marks in the clay, so you get a history of how the forms are made. And also when I have these forms, sometimes I turn them upside down. And maybe I have some small models here I can show you maybe a little bit later, but I can also say that each part is glazed in its own glaze, and also in form of if it should be a light, bright glaze or more matte glaze. And then that give me the opportunity to make like you see in this piece here, the middle part is like gray bluish, and I mean it would be difficult to just have this part glazed if you have a one piece. Do you understand what I mean?
Not
yeah. No, okay, but so maybe I should how can I do that so you can see what I have here?
Put it in front of the camera.
Maybe it's difficult, yeah.
Yeah. We can see you.
Because maybe it's more easy to explain, like maybe this is just a small schedule. So this part I start making flat here, making the legs in porcelain, and then it's bisque fired, and then I turn it around because I think that's funny. And then I take the outskirt, or how do you say that, the shape here, the form, and then I start building another part in stoneware. And then I specify also that, and then I start putting them on top of each other and thinking, oh, does this work or does it not work? And looking at the dimension, maybe I want this higher. And then I'm thinking maybe I should have something on top. And then I make I just have several forms here, a porcelain maybe thing. And that's how I'm working. So I have several in my studio. I have several forms. And in the end, when I find a form that I like, I take each part and glaze them individually and put them together. So the glaze will be like a glue, and during the firing, it would be like a whole sculpture. And I find that's quite funny because I get something new, and also I get the, how can you say that, during the firing, the type of clay have different kind of shrinkage, so they will move a little bit. So they will come out. With another balance, as I mean that the kiln will somehow disturb my control a little bit. But I find that's quite funny to work with. So yeah.
Thank you.
So it's like a building blocks that yeah. So sometimes when I idea it change during the working process. Yeah.
Do we have one more image as well, Lucy?
We should, yes. There you go. And
yeah, and then I'm also working with I mean, as I was trained on Bornholm in the beginning of I was the first student at the glass and ceramic school on Bornholm, and my teacher was English, and we had a lot of guest teachers, but it was quite a lot of guest teachers from England. So I think my year, we were taught a lot in functional wear, like throwing and functional ceramic. We also had Nina Hole, but I think that I'm still working with these, how do you say, forms like round and cylinders, and yeah, also yeah, working a lot with square. But I mean, there's behind me I can see that I still have some oh, how do you say it, yeah, I connect with these experiences from throwing, or yeah, functional wear.
So, Charlotte, I wanted to ask a question about Bornholm, and it seems to me that in terms of that there's been gathering momentum in Bornholm as an education center. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution and the energy that's coming from Bornholm in the Danish scene?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as you were talking about Gertrud Wesegaard earlier, but I mean, there's a big tradition for ceramic on the island. There's been a lot of factories on the island, and also this factory in Rønne, Hjort's factory, is still working. It's like a museum when you visit it, but it's still working, and there's a lot of things happening there. But the owner, the Hans Hjort, he got these two daughters, Gertrud and Lisbeth, as a Gertrud Wesegaard and Lisbeth Munk Petersen, and they were working there as yeah, decoration or in the factory. But after a while, these two sisters, they settled down in Gudhjem, and the father, he supported them to get a studio in Gudhjem, and they start making their own ceramic. And there was also a lot of painters coming to the island at that time. So I mean, the whole island has a history of art and ceramic, especially ceramic, because of all the factories. And after the school started in 1970, 1970, yeah. Anyway, but it has, I mean, the whole country, the whole island has really been how do you say, lifted up, and there's been so many ceramic people coming on the island, and a lot of the students are now settling down in the island. So we are becoming quite a big community of artists on the island, and yeah, I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to kick off the roundtable conversational part, and we're going to talk for another probably 15 minutes, and then we'll probably have a little after party if anyone wants to unmute yourself afterwards. I encourage anyone who wants to submit a question to use the chat feature as well. So it's been incredible for me, and it's really something that's striking for me, that anytime that I talk to a Danish artist, there's a constant talk about community and mentors and generations. So that's sort of my first question for the three of you, and I'll sort of direct it to Bente. I think when I look at the generations of Danish artists, there does seem to be movements within the generations and thoughts within the generations. Bente, can you talk a little bit about, I feel like, so I will point out that oddly, Meta and Charlotte and I are exactly the same age. We were all born in 1973. Bente, you're a little bit older, but can you talk a little bit about your generation, for lack of a better word, rebelling a little bit? I think that there is a marked kind of light rebellion within your generation, that you are trained in design, but pushing back a little bit against the functional and sort of against some of the ways that your teachers operated within sort of art and design. Is that accurate?
Bente.
And you'll have to unmute.
I was graduated in 1980s from the School of Arts and Craft in Kolding. And at that time, there were 2 schools in Denmark where you could train as a ceramic designer. In Copenhagen, the School of Applied Art was probably more design orientated, while the school in Kolding was known for a freer approach, where you could also make larger, unique projects. It was more art orientated. So I think my generation, or maybe the class just before me, they built some very large sculptures in the geographic garden, and it was like there were at that time a freer approach to design, and I know that there were this difference between the schools. Today there's actually the school on Bornholm, because the ceramic departments are closing down. But I can say for many years after my education, I worked in the field of jars and balls and vases, and I remember very well when I took the leap that it might also imagine something, and that was a pretty anxious step, I remember, because when you are trained as a ceramic artist, jars, vases and balls are kind of framework that justifies what you do, or it's a frame. So I think when I released myself from these archetypes, the possibilities were suddenly endless, and you have to come up with your own frames of your work. I remember that step, and that's probably because I also had the design, the craft education. Yeah.
And Metamaya or Charlotta, would you like to chime in? Do you have any reflections on the influence or consciously pushing back against the generations that came before you? Metamaya.
Yeah, well, I think what came before me, because most of my education was in England, and having been taught about the whole art and craft movement, and how women were not the artists back then. I mean, they were not even allowed into the art schools of any of the countries, because back then it was a craft and it was a craftsmanship. But because now ceramics has also moved from being a craft into studio pottery and then to fine art, and all of a sudden women has been, because they've been part of the whole development, the evolution, and I think this is why also they are such a strong voice today, because they've not kind of been let off, or they've not been I mean because it has been a craft, and now it's still a craft, and because we're so much back to the materialism of the things, and ceramics now it's not about, it's not so academic anymore. It's not context. I mean, it's the material that we all working with the material, with the glaze, the marks, the feelings, and I think this is why it's such a great thing to be a ceramic artist at the moment, I think, and to be, I mean, to have all these great colleagues and to be able to show, I mean, what we're working with out in the world. And I think because it has been such a steady evolution from craftsmanship to art, and that could never have happened overnight. I mean, this is like Gertrud Weisegård and Gud Eriksen. I mean, they started back then for 50 years, 100 years ago, and it's things just takes time, and now we are kind of just here to reap, in a way, all that, and yeah.
So when I visited Denmark 18 months ago, I came away with an observation that I wrote about in the little essay that I wrote about for the exhibition. And I visited some young artists who were in their 20s or early 30s, and I really saw this incredible split. And I guess, you know, sort of asking you to speak to the younger generation a little bit, but it seemed like on one hand, there was a young generation of artists who we're looking to get back into functional ceramics. And there's an explosion of potters and designers who are making dinnerware that works with sort of new Nordic cuisine. And these artists seem very idealistic. And then on the other hand, there are, I think, a lot of up and coming young sculptors who view ceramics as a very immediate sculptural medium. Would any of you like to comment a little bit on, you know, sort of that relationship?
Well, if I can just comment shortly upon that, because I think there's two different lanes that the ceramics are developing into. It's a bit like when you were taught perspective drawings. I mean, you have to learn all the rules, and once you learn them, you can break them. I mean, now, I mean, the way I was taught properly with oxides, and but now, I mean, we break all the rules that's there, and I think, wow, I mean, the youngsters today going into the field of ceramics, they're like, bloody hell, there's nothing they can't do. I mean, they can do everything, and I mean, we couldn't do everything. So I mean, so I think there's these kids who just want to break every rule they can find, and at the same time, I mean, you want to do it functionally also. I mean, why not make all this lovely material something you can do and use in your everyday life? So I think that this is the new generation that's about to explore how they're gonna kind of divide their time between material ideas and thoughts.
So Charlotte, you have an interesting viewpoint on this, being, you know, sort of right in Bornholm, and you get to see, I think, you know, emerging students. Do you have any particular reflections about where the next generation is heading?
I think it's the same, like Mette said, that it's like a lot of the students now are using the kilns like some kind of experimental boxes. I mean, they put things in and they just mix the glazes, like they don't weigh it. They take a spoon and do. So they mix it, and it's sort of yeah, they are just doing it in a completely other way that I was taught. But what I'm thinking is still that somehow I think it's important that they learn about form and maybe throwing or something, because I think you should have that in your background, to have some kind of an eye for proportion and balance, and then maybe you can start getting crazy. I'm not sure if it's the right way to get crazy at the first. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I absolutely
what I'm
do.
thinking, but because it's easy to make something, maybe not easy, but like when I see it at your pieces, Bente, I mean, I can see some years behind and some experiences. So I think some of these young people should, I mean, we'll see what will happen when they come out, but I think, I don't know, I just feel that maybe you should have this, like Mette said before, that you should know to draw spatial dimension, how do you say it, Mette? But anyway, to draw, and then you can get crazy. I mean, and so you have some experience. Yeah, do you
Yeah.
understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I absolutely do. And again, the three of us are exactly the same age. And so it's odd to find oneself in one's mid 40s, thinking about, the young kids and their educations and, their 3D printers. And I'm very interested. I think very invested in the next generation. So anyway, I'm curious. So Lucy, let's kick it to you. I mean, you're a gallerist. You have this curatorial eye. Are there observations that you're making about the youth of Denmark?
The youth always goes on. I mean, I would say the first observation is seeing how in Denmark the artists went from the vessel directly to sculpture. So, you have the makers of the early years, Gertrude Gouda, going into Baudillemont, everybody, the vessel was king or queen. And then you have people who probably born in the 60s, like Bente, and then you have even Steen Ibsen and who's the guy? Anyway, oh wait, here he is. Find him. Well, anyway, I have to find it. But going straight to sculpture, like skipping the vessel, and I think Bente went to the vessel first, and then you went to straight sculpture. But then you have, like you're all saying, what's beyond sculpture, and then it's all this experimentation. So I think the real question is, what will be, what will be the next thing after that? After you've broken every rule and everything, it's all part of the mix. Yes, Bente.
I just want to say that I think that what the younger generation are doing is wonderful and much more free and much more experimental and everything. But I think there's also a hunger for knowledge and for the crafts, actually. And the ceramics is flourishing just now. It's you can go to a pottery class on every street corner. It's popping up everywhere. So I think it will come back strong.
Yeah, I'm looking at the young designers and the young potters, and I use the word idealistic. I feel like legacy is in good hands in Denmark, and so I'm curious to see how this conversation works. So probably the last question before we sort of break into the after party comes from Ashwini, who's on the call. And this, I think, is a really terrific call and or a terrific question. And she's asked a great question about the influence of the landscape on the art. And it's absolutely one that I see as well. And, maybe an interesting corollary that I will make is I'm a fan of Scottish tweed, and with Harris tweed in particular in Scotland, the colors that filter into the woven tweed are meant to reflect all of the mosses and lichens that you see on all of the rocks in the landscape. And so there's a direct correlation between the color and the texture. And I think that there's something very specific in the color palette and the textures of Danish art. And Ashwini talked about her memories of India and the way that those play into her work. So can any of you reflect on the way that the Danish landscape comes into the Art Nouveau works and then into your own abstractions? Anyone who wants to take that on? Metamaya, I think that's a really amazing.
I'll go for that one. I'll take that one. Well, for me, I mean, because one of the questions you asked earlier also was, I mean, the Danish design. And for me, design has just been a really, really difficult word. I mean, because I don't feel like I'm not designing anything. And then I started to look around my own workshop and I thought, oh my God, I'm taking all nature's design into my work, and I'm just trying to reflect all the design I see in the natural world and try to kind of represent that into a material form and a material shape. And so I think nature for me especially, and I also see that in every other work, because it's very organic, and somehow, instead of, to me especially, it is to, I mean, art for me is also to represent and to reflect something that you see and to show it back to people. I think especially nature's design is definitely something that is represented in my work.
And Charlotta, I think of the three artists that we have today, your work is the most sort of architectural, but the way that you incorporate the fingerprints and the organic into your work, I think, can you talk a little bit about the landscape as something that filters into your own sort of impressions and work?
I mean, I'm living on this beautiful island, and I have the nature just out of my door, and I think the choice of the color of my ceramic is quite inspired of the nature, and also the forms. I mean, architectural. Now we are talking about they're looking like architectural forms, but also, I mean, some of them are also quite similar to the nature forms. But I don't like when visitors are coming, mostly tourists on the island, they ask me, so you're inspired by the rocks or the something like that. I think it sounds a little bit too romantic. So I would say, yeah, I am inspired somehow unconscious by the nature, and I love the nature. I mean, I love the season of this year on Bornholm right now, when it's gray and dark and not so shiny. So
spoken, I think, like a true Gen Xer. Like we I think are always just a little bit suspicious of the literal translation and wearing our hearts on our sleeves. So I want to actually wrap things up, and Lucy, I want to give you the last word and have you reflect a little bit on the exhibition and in the conversation that we've had today.
Well, thank you, Garth. In terms of the exhibition, it's fantastic, and this conversation just highlights it and underscores it. I mean, it's so beautiful to see Charlotta's pieces in person, where you can see the handprints and you realize part of the clay is porcelain and part is stoneware. And Metamaya is to feel the force of her work in the presence of nature. And Bente, you know, really so glad that you're participating with your, I would say, delightful sculptural work. So the exhibition is a joy, and I invite you all to come see it. And if you can't come see it, look at it online or ask us for a virtual tour. In terms of this talk, I mean, it underscores everything that we do, and we've learned so much, haven't we? I mean, it really brings the art to life to hear the artists talk about it. So I thank each of you, Metamaya, Charlotta, and Bente, and of course, Garth. Couldn't have done it without you. I thank all the artists for this. Every time an artist gives me good work, I'm really happy.
And Lucy, I have to acknowledge all of the logistics of putting an exhibition like this together. Metamaya, you had like a 100-pound piece that you had to ship to the United States. And so in the middle of a pandemic, speaking as you know, a museum curator, it's such a rare gift to be able to have this work you know, sort of at great expense brought over. And I just have to thank everyone for participating.
I would say, we weren't prepared for the onslaught of crates. We got something like 7 crates from 7 artists, but the results are worth it. So thank you all. Thank everyone who goes on these journeys with us. Please support the exhibition and the artists. We invite you to be part of it that way. So Garth, what would you like to say as you leave the next section?
I just want to wrap things up by, again, thanking everybody all around. And my soul is yearning for Denmark right now, for being in some sort of hygge, Danish living room next to a fire, having some holiday pastries and treats. No one does it like the Danes. My own ancestors are Scandinavian, and so I feel like there's this sort of direct DNA link that brings me back to Denmark. I'm excited about my next adventures in Denmark. And I want to invite anyone who wants to unmute themselves and hang out at the after party for a little bit to do so. But thank you everyone for tuning in today, and thank you for putting on this amazing show.
Thank you, Garth. So I'm going to let you, since you are the co-host, or the host, you be in charge of the after party, because I might have to leave in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and I'll have to peel off in a little bit, but Nancy Service, are you still here? I don't know if Ashwini's here, anyone who wants to. So good for you to join us. It's so early California time. I mean, it's 11 o'clock when we started here in Syracuse, but Nancy, you're 3 time zones away.
So I really enjoyed this presentation. It was excellent. And I was happy to get up at to attend at 8 o'clock. I have an idea. I am the on-site conference liaison for NCECA for when it comes to Sacramento, but I'm on the board now, and we're doing a virtual NCECA for 2021. And I think this would be a really great show to do virtually. And I just texted Brett Binford, who's the who's the exhibitions director. So Lucy, I don't think we've ever met. Hi, nice to meet you.
I'll interject. Nancy is an amazing ceramic historian in California who
is very familiar.
So, I think I just texted Brett. I thought this would be a really great show to have a virtual presence at NCECA. There's some processes that we're still figuring out how to present shows digitally, but I think this could be amazing. And so I hope that's something that's of interest to you.
Yeah. That would
great.
And if it's virtual, it's easy to add some Effie Hagerman Lindenkron and say,
we'll make it part of it.
Mix. Very easy.
We can get canonical.
Yes.
Great idea.
It's a great show. I mean, it's a really great show, and I loved, Garth, I loved your introduction there. As you said, I mean, that could just be terrific. And so I've studied Danish ceramics just a little bit in terms of a collector in Sacramento who has some pieces. But really, I'm very inspired by what I saw today. Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone.
And again, like Danish artists have been such great travelers that Danish artists have had such a good presence at NCECA, and you have wormed your way into the U.S. educational system as well with Anders' tenure at Cranbrook and Anne's being at the Chicago Art Institute right now. We are feeling like that legacy in the U.S.
Congratulations to all the artists.
Thank you.
And to Lucy to putting this together. And thanks, Garth. I'm off to my studio.
Ashwini, quick question before you go. I have heard, so Ashwini is the curator this year for the Scripps Ceramic Annual, which is one of the biggest sort of national exhibitions that, has a similar legacy to the Everson Ceramic Nationals, but with the pandemic, are you actually going to be sort of opening in January, and then do we get an extended exhibition? What's up with
No,
the,
we are opening in 2022.
Okay.
We decided to skip it.
Okay. I think that's great. Get more people there. You know, this has really been such an ambitious exhibition over the years, and it would be a pity for people not to be able to see it.
Yeah. And the scripts, everybody was very supportive of the idea that those sculptural works need to be experienced all around, not just virtually. So hoping for better 2021 and safer 2022. Yeah. But I wish I could see this show in person. Usually I do manage to see shows in Lucy's gallery, but nice to meet you all virtually, and I'll find you on Instagram, like we all do.
And if you don't know Ashwini's amazing artwork in history, seek her out as well, and I'd be happy to send a link to her work in an email.
And I just want to say goodbye. I have to
Okay.
off, but Garth, you can tell me about everything.
I will. We're probably
going to you and Charlotta, Bente.
Thanks.
Metamaya, everybody. Okay. We'll
Bye,
meet
Lucy.
Bye, Lucy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So Binda's been to visit me in Syracuse, but I absolutely extend the invitation, Charlotta and Metamaya, to come visit. If you come out to Lucy's, I mean, it's a 4-hour drive out to Syracuse, but there's so much, I think, that can be seen. And we're only a couple of hours away from Alfred as well.
It's a fantastic museum.
Okay.
Yeah. So you must come visit, and we've got great guest quarters as well. And you saw you saw the next generation taking an interest in the presentation today. My 8-year-old was, or 9-year-old now, was reading her book and checking in from time to time.
And we came to see Syracuse and Everson I came with Sten Ibsen and Martin Kaldal, Copenhagen Ceramics, and were traveling around, and this was one of our stops. It was a great pleasure to have the the speech of all the, you introduced us to all the American highlights.
We had a major Yoko Ono exhibition up as well.
Yes,
so
yes. Yeah. Great.
You three up on the in the Yoko.
And you know, Copenhagen Ceramics is coming back next year at the Hostler Boros. We're going to make an exhibition with 9 Danish ceramic artists at Hostler Boros. I'm going to make a catalog, and maybe you'll hear from us.
Great. So in LA or in New York? In Los Angeles or New York?
New York, yeah. In New York.
I'm excited to visit them in LA. I haven't been yet.
Yeah, I hope it will be in the end of April. It depends, of course, of everything, but now we have to finish this pandemic, and then we are coming on.
How is Denmark on the vaccine?
We didn't open for it yet. We are still waiting to have, I think in the end of December, they're saying that they will, make it through.
I think they just made the decision to approve the Pfizer vaccine last night. So I heard that. And then when everybody will have the vaccine, then you have to go out, and I don't know. So I'm thinking about, the things that I do in the museum, you know, when we're allowed to gather and celebrate again.
Yeah, could be very nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I actually probably need to shuffle off and take a comfort break, but I thank you all so much, and I'm super happy that I was looped into this, and desperate to get back to Denmark.
I think it went well, very well compared to the testing.
Yeah. Well, it's been great. Thank you very much, everybody. And Gareth, you're always welcome. And Bente and Charlotte, you're welcome too if your path takes you to Sminge. Lovely to have a chit chat and a workshop.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Stay hygge, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a nice time.
Thank you, and have a nice
Thank you,
evening.
guys.
Weekend. And,
Thanks, everybody.
bye.
Bye.